Welcome to Ground Control, and I have the Dancing Wings Hobby J3 FireBird Cub. It comes as a bind and fly kit, or you can buy just the kit. I think you can get the motor, the servos, but not the receiver if you want to purchase it that way. But I can tell you that this is probably the best flying sub 100 gram plane that I've flown so far. It has very good power. You can do great aerobatics with it, and it's also efficient, so you get a lot of flight time. The bind and fly kit that I received from Banggood, and I want to thank them again for saying this for review, is it's just a standard receiver. It has a built-in brushless ESC, but it doesn't have any gyro. I know some of you weren't happy about it not having a gyro in it. But I can tell you, as far as manual mode flight, and I have flown a lot of sub 100 gram planes in manual mode full flight, this one is the most stable, best handling sub 100 gram plane that I've flown so far. It's a blast to fly. I've made some modifications to it that I'm going to talk about here in a minute with the main wing, and go out and test it. And as soon as I'm happy with the setup, I will go ahead and publish the setup and OpenTX model files on our Facebook page for anybody who's interested in that. But once I get it all tuned with the modification that I made to the main wing and get it flying exactly the way I want it, I'm going to be testing a micro receiver in it that also has a 2S 7-amp brushless ESC, but it also has a gyro built into it. So I'm going to be doing a review and testing of that, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in this plane. Since this plane handles so well already in full manual mode, which is the only way I've flown it, there's no gyro in it right now. So I thought this would be a good plane to test the gyro out in, to see just how stable it is with the gyro in it, because in manual mode it's extremely stable. Alright, so the modification that I made to it, if you haven't watched the first video where I went through and I talked about everything that came with the plane and the build process, and at the end of the talk about it I provided a image slideshow. I tried to take a picture of every step of the way during my build so that you could see it, and you can tell from the pictures exactly what's happening. What I did to the main wing was I took some of those little I think they call it vinyl paper. They have these little hinges. They're basically vinyl paper hinges. I used one for the rudder where it attaches to the bottom of the fuselage, and there was a pack of 6 of them in there. I only used one. So I took 4 of the remaining ones and I just glued them to the top control surface, the top of the wing and the top of the control surface for the ailerons. So I've got 2 on each aileron. I have a small piece of 1mm carbon rod glued to the trailing edge of the aileron to keep it rigid. And then I cut through all of those little foam hinges, and I get much better movement on the ailerons now than I had with the foam hinges. It's smoother. I don't get any warping in the aileron control surface when it's moving up and down, because there's a lot less resistance to it now than there was with the foam hinges. So, and they included those in the kit. So my recommendation would be to glue those on for your ailerons, and then once those set up and dry and are ready to go, just go ahead and cut through all of those little foam tabs that they used for the hinges on the ailerons. It'll work much better with these little vinyl paper hinges than it does with the foam hinges. Okay, so I had read somewhere or watched a video somewhere where they were talking about full span ailerons, and that full span ailerons can make a plane less stable at slow speed. Well, I don't know how true that is, but I had so much authority on the ailerons that I actually had to reduce my dual rates, not once but twice. So what I decided to do was on the wing tip here, it's about 35 millimeters of that aileron. I went ahead and I filled that gap where the foam hinge is. I filled that with glue on both sides. And then once the glue set up, I went ahead and took an X-Acto blade, a utility knife, and I cut through that aileron about 35 millimeters back from the greatest extent toward the wing tip of the aileron. So that the wing tip is now solid where it used to be aileron. And so I shortened the aileron span by 35 millimeters doing that. But I've got so much authority on these ailerons, I don't think that is going to affect my roll rate one bit. So after I cut off that 35 millimeters there and made it solid for the wing tip, I increased my dual rate back up 10 points from where it was before. But now that the ailerons are moving so much smoother now, I'm not sure if I really needed to do that. So we're going to take it out and we're going to test that and see what kind of roll authority I still have on those ailerons. I think if anything I will probably have to put it back 5 or 10 points from where I've got it right now. I did add some right angle to the motor. It seemed like the roll to the left was a little bit quicker than the roll to the right because I was going against the torque. So I did go ahead and put a couple 1 millimeter spacers on the left hand side of the motor to get a little right angle to counter the torque on the motor. So we'll be testing that too. I also took a little piece of that spare carbon fiber that I had in the kit. I cut up the width of the nose of the aircraft and I glued it on top of the fuselage as a keeper for that canopy cover. I hadn't had anything that secured that canopy cover other than the fact that it was a nice tight friction fit on the top of the fuselage, but the more frequently that you take that out and put it back in, you're going to have less and less friction to hold it in. So that little piece of carbon slat that goes across the top, the edge of the canopy slips right underneath it, and so that canopy is definitely not going to be going anywhere. That was a quick and easy fix, extremely lightweight fix, and the material was already included in the kit. So I also recommend doing that. So anyway, now that I've told you how much I like this aircraft and the fact that it's, I think, the best flying sub 100 gram plane that I've flown so far, let's go out and test my modifications and my adjustment on the motor angle, see how good or how bad I did, and then as soon as I'm happy with the way it's handling again after making these adjustments, we'll be testing that receiver that has a built-in gyro in it. So that will give you another option if you're interested in this plane, just getting the kit with the motor, the servos, and then ordering a separate receiver for it that has a gyro built into it. So I will see you out at the field.
Okay, let's get this J3 FireBird Cub back in the air and see what I have on this wing and aileron modification. Alright, launching. Got a little more wind out here than I would like for this demonstration, but that's par for the course out here. Yeah, a considerable amount of wind, especially 20 to 30 feet off the ground. Okay, so do a rudder turn here. Another rudder turn. That just spins around in that wind, doesn't it? Almost a roller coaster turn. Okay, so let's see. Let's come back through here and see what our roll rate looks like. Not bad. It may have decreased the roll rate ever so slightly, but I do not have mechanically the most amount of movement I can put on the ailerons. On the control horn, I am at the second innermost hole. So if I want to, if I want to, I can move that linkage to the innermost hole and get some more movement on the ailerons. But that is not a bad roll rate for a bush plane, I don't think. I think that's pretty good. Ooh, we hit some wind there, didn't we? So I'm keeping a little altitude on it because this wind is kind of unpredictable, and I think we have competing winds out here this morning. Looking at the way it's reacting. Awesome power. So I have to say, putting several flights on this plane now, making a couple modifications to it. Motor angle, the wing and aileron mod that I just performed. I have to say that this is the best handling, best performing sub 100 gram plane that I have flown so far, and I've flown quite a few of them. The vast majority of these sub 100 gram planes, of course, are brush motor and gearbox planes. So most of them lack on power. Most of them have to have some significant linkage adjustments to get them flying well in manual mode. And with this plane, other than having way too much aileron authority, which really surprised me on the maiden flight, all I've had to do so far was adjust the dual rate and expo on this plane. I haven't really had to make any linkage adjustments from the way I originally set them up. I haven't made any linkage adjustments from the way that I originally set it up. I just adjusted my dual rate and my expo. So that is something else that I haven't experienced before on a sub 100 gram plane, is being able to get it flying the way I want to fly it by just adjusting the dual rate and the expo, which is, you know, what you can normally do on a much bigger plane. And I've never flown a sub 100 gram plane that had this amount of power, ever. That is fantastic, especially for a bush plane. So I don't have any complaints about this plane. Now I did need to add a little bit of right motor angle to counteract the motor torque. That's not unusual to have to do. But what I wanted to see today was this wing and aileron mod. I still have a very good roll rate. What I'm wondering is if it enhances slow flight stability. And I'll find that out when I'm coming in for a landing, because if they, you know, when the ailerons were full span, when I was coming in for a landing, if I came in a little bit too slow, it would tip a wingtip on me right before I touched down. So I'm just curious to see if that, you know, now that those ailerons are not going full span all the way out to the wingtip, if that enhances that stability. But, you know, flying an amount of wind that it's actually hitting this morning, I don't think that's bad at all. Look at that. That is awesome. This plane is a lot of fun. Like I said, you know, in calmer wind, much calmer wind than I have out here today, you can fly this in a very small area, guys. And I think this was designed, you know, as a park flyer, but also as an indoor flyer. So if you've got a place in the wintertime where you can fly indoors, Man, I wish I had that. I wish I had a place where I could fly indoors in the wintertime. This plane would be a really good candidate for that too. So excellent park flyer on calmer days, and an indoor, make a good indoor flyer. Okay, let's see. Still saw it tip a wingtip right there toward the end. So I don't know. We'll have to test. I like to be able to test that out in calmer wind. But I think that not having the ailerons all the way out to the wingtip has got to help on slow flight stability, because you don't have that. You don't have that control surface moving up and down, deflecting air from the end of the wingtip now. So, but just an awesome flying little sub 100 gram plane. I'm having a blast with it. That was the last battery pack I had this morning. It was a little calmer when I first started. Maybe I should have started filming then, but roll rate still good. No complaints there. The deflection on the ailerons is actually better than it was before I put those little vinyl paper hinges on it and cut through all those foam hinges. There's a lot less resistance on the aileron servos now than there was, and you don't get that bend toward the end of the aileron because it's having to push through all those little foam hinges. So that definitely was an improvement on the aileron movement and keeping everything squared up. So I'm very happy with it. It's an awesome flying little sub 100 gram plane. Like I said, it would also make a good indoor plane in the wintertime. So don't discount it. It's a little bit of work on the build, but it didn't take that long, and I think the results are well worth it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.